In 1324, Mali was still just a regional state situated in a corner of West Africa, on the fringes of the broader Muslim world. However, the ambitious King Mansa Musa had a well-thought-out plan to shock the world with an audacious display of wealth. He intended to personally undertake a pilgrimage to Mecca, using an incalculable amount of gold to buy ample space for his country's future development. As early as the 11th and 12th centuries, the initial Mali state emerged in the small Mandinka region along the upper Niger River. Although they had converted to Islam, they were unable to engage directly in trade with their Muslim brothers along the Mediterranean coast. The reason was that to the north lay the Ghana Empire, which had risen earlier and controlled the oasis routes across the desert, allowing them to profit as middlemen taking a cut without interference. However, the situation quickly changed due to climate issues. The expansion of the Sahara Desert caused the surrounding grasslands to shrink, leading to the rapid decline of the urban agricultural base that supported Ghana's dominance, reducing it to semi-isolated small towns. In contrast, the Niger River Valley further south, with its abundant water resources, maintained large-scale production settlements and achieved economic superiority. By around 1235, Mali had risen to become the ultimate hub of the trans-Saharan inland trade network in the northwest. As Mali emerged as a typical new economy, the accumulation of wealth inevitably led to internal strife. In 1255, Sakura, originally a royal slave, successfully usurped the throne and took various proactive measures to strengthen his legitimacy. He intensified expansion into surrounding areas, launching military campaigns along both the eastern and western banks of the Niger River, while also actively seeking reliable allies abroad. For example, he led his trusted followers on a pilgrimage to Mecca, where he established connections with the powerful Mamluk Sultan al-Nasir. Although Sakura was tragically assassinated upon his victorious return, he provided an invaluable example for those who followed. In 1312, Mansa Musa came to power. Although he outwardly claimed that the previous ruler of Mali, Muhammad, had disappeared due to his obsession with maritime exploration, it is more likely that Musa was a usurper similar to Sakura, having taken the throne through a coup. By means of premeditated exile, assassination, and other methods, he drove the old king and his loyal supporters out of the country. As a result, in the early years of his reign, Musa also focused on strengthening central authority and rapidly developing the economy. By collecting significant tolls, salt taxes, and exploiting 3 large gold mines, he was able to financially overpower the local chieftains, reducing them to roles as mere cavalry or local officials tasked with maintaining order. He then distributed much of the land to ordinary citizens in exchange for their absolute loyalty and their obligation to serve as infantry during wartime. Finally, just before embarking on his pilgrimage, he annexed Timbuktu, the most important city south of the Sahara Desert. In doing so, he built an unprecedented West African empire that spanned across modern-day Senegal, southern Mauritania, central Mali, northern Burkina Faso, western Niger, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea, and the Ivory Coast. However, as the supreme ruler of a civilization emerging later, Mansa Musa could not ignore the need to gain recognition and respect from the outside world. So, after stabilizing the domestic situation, he quickly drew upon the vast wealth he had accumulated over the years and personally led a large entourage on a pilgrimage to Mecca. Seeking to legitimize his rule by paying homage to the spiritual center of the Muslim world and buying off various powers along the way, he aimed to erase his image as a usurper. Additionally, the wealth of the Mali Empire largely depended on trade with regions north of the Sahara Desert. Therefore, the pilgrimage was also inherently economic in nature, serving as a necessary performance for the king to ensure the safety of trade routes and to reaffirm existing policies. In the spring of 1324, Mansa Musa crossed the Niger River and departed the capital with 60,000 pilgrims fully prepared for the journey. Among them were his wives and concubines, personal slaves, armed guards, scholars, and merchants, all carrying multiple responsibilities. Additionally, there were 12,000 carefully selected, finely dressed slaves. This was not because the procession lacked pack animals. On the contrary, Musa had prepared a vast number of horses, 80 camels, and an assortment of exotic animals belonging to the king himself. The slaves, therefore, had a role beyond basic labor. They carried the sacred mission of showcasing Mali's wealth to the outside world. All of them were dressed in luxurious garments made of brocade and Persian silk, becoming a dazzling sight in the vast expanse of the desert. Over the following months, the entire caravan traveled along the established trans-Saharan trade routes. The first stop was Walata, a typical oasis city located in what is now southeastern Mauritania, which at the time rivaled Timbuktu to the south. Continuing north from there, they would enter Taghaza, a key stronghold of the desert-dwelling Tuareg nomads and the center of salt production in the medieval Sahara. For any empire based in West Africa, the smooth operation of trade routes and the salt trade were essential. Each black African group needed to learn how to coexist peacefully with their Moorish neighbors. If the fragile balance could no longer be maintained through financial means, it often led to large-scale bloodshed and conflict. Subsequently, King Musa's caravan gradually veered eastward, making its way through the small town of Salah in what is now southern Algeria. This town was not only a commonly used north-south trade route shortcut, but also on the fringe of the Mediterranean coastal economic zone. Traditional Berber pastoralists often brought Arab visitors here to meet with Tuareg traders who represented southern interests. When the pilgrims saw the Ghadamis oasis on the western border of Libya, it marked their successful departure from the desert comfort zone and entry into a new world that was often heard of but not very familiar. Finally, they reached the small town of Oujla on the Cyrenaica Peninsula, the eastern boundary of traditional Berber dialects, and the last stop before the grand event began. It is worth noting that the mighty king of Mali spent a massive fortune on this pilgrimage. For example, each of the 12,000 slaves dressed in luxurious clothing carried 1.8 kilograms of gold, and the gold dust carried by the accompanying camels ranged from 23 to 136 kilograms. As a result, later scholars estimate that Musa brought between 8 to 12 tons of gold abroad. On July 16, 1324, the 60,000-person pilgrimage caravan arrived in Cairo, the capital of the Mamluk Sultanate. They set up camp beside the magnificent Giza pyramids and 3 days later entered the city along the Nile River to meet the long-awaited Sultan al-Nasir Muhammad. The Sultan, fully aware of the true purpose behind the Malians' long journey, demanded that Musa perform a kneeling ceremony in his presence. To his surprise, Musa flatly refused and only offered a lower bow as a form of acknowledgement. Meanwhile, the Mali pilgrims, following the king's instructions, began to flaunt their immense wealth in this secular center of the Islamic world. They stayed in Cairo for a full 3 months, continuously inundating the luxury markets and trade hubs with gold, leading to a rapid devaluation of the local currency, the dinar. More gold dust was generously distributed to the poor and charitable institutions, and every Friday during significant prayers, it was used to fund the construction of a new mosque. Musa himself was also very active, frequently engaging in lively conversations with high officials and renowned scholars, and presenting them with valuable gifts. Perhaps this was the key factor in avoiding any difficulties from al-Nasir. On October 18th, Musa and his entourage set off again, traveling with the official Mamluk convoy towards the eastern holy sites. Since Jerusalem had been destroyed by Khwarezmian mercenaries during the earlier Crusades, the only remaining pilgrimage destinations were Medina and Mecca on the Arabian Peninsula. At this point, the overconfident king was completely out of control, indiscriminately distributing money to the poor along the way. Upon reaching the holy cities, he went to great lengths to demonstrate his piety, exhausting his remaining gold. During this time, they also had a serious conflict with a group of Turkish pilgrims, nearly coming to blows inside the Grand Mosque of Mecca. Fortunately, Musa, well aware of his international standing, persuaded his nobles to downplay the incident, ensuring that he did not cause any embarrassment during the journey. In the spring of the following year, the king of Mali, believing he had completed an epic pilgrimage, began his return journey along the original route. This time, without the Mamluk official convoy accompanying them and facing difficulties due to a lack of funds, the convoy was attacked by numerous Bedouin tribes as they reached the Sinai Peninsula. Musa had to abandon his previous proud demeanor and find ways to arrange transportation home for himself and his thousands of followers. Initially, he sold off goods purchased in Cairo and later resorted to borrowing large sums of money from local merchants in his personal capacity. Despite these efforts, many slaves suffered from lack of medical care and died in the cold desert nights. Ultimately, it was Sultan Nasir, the noble host, who extended a helping hand, ensuring that the Malians could safely make their way home. Due to the lack of relevant records, it is unclear how many Malians successfully returned home. However, it is certain that Musa did not end his arduous journey until 1326. Although it came at a very high cost, it did achieve satisfactory results on the diplomatic front. At least according to the Spanish who created the Catalan Atlas decades later, he was ultimately regarded as the wealthiest ruler in the world. It is unclear that after Musa's death, the Mali Empire would soon undergo a dramatic transition from prosperity to decline.